Colleen, welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. Today's topic is a heavy one where we're talking about human trafficking, which is the second fastest growing organized crime. Certainly back in the day when I was in high school and in my 20s, it wasn't something that we talked about. I don't think I even knew what it was. It certainly wasn't part of any conversation. It is these days in 2026. We certainly hear about it. We've learned about it. Even our kids, have a sense for what it is. So it's a conversation that needs to happen, and we need to continue to bring awareness to this topic. So I thought that we perhaps start with just kind of putting some numbers out there. And I know that we don't necessarily have all the numbers that may not be accurate, but just to give a sense to the viewers for what are we talking about today versus, perhaps 10 years ago, and how does it compare, in terms of countries, Canada versus, maybe US or Europe. Would love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, so again, just before I give any numbers, I would like to say the numbers and statistics that are available when it comes to sex trafficking doesn't even show a quarter of the reality of how many people are being trafficked every single day. And there is really no way to be able to tell it because sex trafficking is one of the most underreported crimes out there. In
Mm,
Canada in 2024, there were 608 police reports for sex trafficking, and 374 of those were in Ontario alone. So, Ontario is a well known hub for human trafficking, unfortunately.
wow.
And in 2024, it was a slight increase from 2023. So it comes down to a few things. One is a lot of people don't actually realize they're being trafficked until it's over.
Mhm.
A lot of girls and women end up in this situation due to either their boyfriend or a friend, and sometimes they even go in willing. And it turns into the situation where they don't really realize that they are completely trapped until they try and exit, and then there's no way for them to get out. There's also the fact that unfortunately, I know that the police have been doing such an amazing job. They're trying to be trauma informed, and I work with Toronto Police and Durham Regional Police very closely, and I see them actively changing the way that they approach situations. But unfortunately, historically, there has been such a stigma put around survivors coming out, and they haven't been approached with the care and support that they needed. And when survivors go and report, they're normally treated like the perpetrator versus the victim at first. So
Mm,
there's always this underlying fear of how they will be treated when they go and report, and if justice will even be served. Because a lot of times, unfortunately, going to the police, nothing really happens with our justice system. They get out on bail and then they reoffend, they go back for a couple days, get out again. And then there's also the fact that some survivors, once they have the ability to be able to report and they're out and they're safe, they don't wanna have to relive that trauma again.
yes.
So a lot of the times when I'm working with other organizations, we are seeing drastically higher numbers than the police could ever report. And that's because a lot of survivors end up going to organizations versus the police to be able to get help. And that's like for therapy or for medical help, or even just like support classes, like even Victim Services Toronto, things like that. It's a lot easier for somebody to reach out for support versus reaching out and trying to report something when they know that there's a huge chance that it might do nothing.
And is your perspective that there is enough support for these type of victims out there in Canada or Ontario?
So, no,
Mm,
the biggest issue is a lot of the bigger cities have supports, but when you go to smaller towns, they're absolutely drowning.
mm,
Even for Durham region, so that's like Ajax, Pickering, Whitby, Oshawa, they are absolutely drowning for resources. Everywhere across Canada has wait lists that's 6 months to a year, some are even longer.
wow.
And then on top of that, as soon as you get into these services, let's say you get a therapist, it's so hard because it's short term. 90%
Mm.
of the services are short term. So you're getting 6 to 10 appointments with a therapist.
Oh
You
my
can't
gosh.
really unpack everything
No.
and be followed. And then you have the situations where so many survivors end up working with a therapist, but then they don't reach out for help after that 10 sessions is over. And then we see these survivors who are struggling, and people wonder, oh, why don't you reach out for help again? It's that re-traumatization of having to retell their story to every single professional again and again, for the rest of their lives. Because the reality is, a survivor needs support for the rest of their lives. This is not trauma that will just go away within a month or within a year or even 10 years of them being out. They're going to consistently be triggered, re
Absolutely.
traumatized. There's going to be situations that arise in their life that they don't know how to handle. And there needs to be that wraparound access to therapy, psychiatry, medication. Also, a lot of survivors, unfortunately, once they get out, they can't afford the medication that they need to be on. For instance, for myself, I'm a survivor, and the medication I'm on costs me about $100 a month.
Oh, wow.
Now imagine somebody who's trying to work and, maybe they have kids and they're a single parent and they're living in a city so that they can try and access these supports, but they can't even afford their own medication. Um, it's really devastating, especially because no matter the numbers that you see, for instance, I think the new strategy, they're bringing in about $304 million to support survivors. But even though that seems like a lot of money, that's not even scratching the surface of the amount of supports for housing, psychiatry, health, therapy, classes, even just simple life skills,
Yeah.
that need to be retaught to survivors. Because unfortunately, the average age of somebody being pulled into trafficking is 13 years old.
Oh my
And the average age of
God.
somebody who is currently in trafficking is 25.
Oh my
So you have people who are 13 years old, little kids who are 13, who are being trafficked up until they're 25. Some are even longer, some are less. So they're missing out on the core life skills that they need to be able to live their life. And again, it's not their fault, but the fact that we just don't have these long-term services that are completely accessible, no matter where you live, no matter where you are, um, it creates so many more barriers for a survivor. So even if they escape trafficking, it's this constant struggle to just try and rebuild your life and feel like you're you know, ready to be able to just breathe.
Yeah, yeah. And do you find based on your knowledge that um, these victims come from very specific groups or socioeconomic backgrounds? Is there a pattern that you're seeing?
Yes and no.
Mm.
So, one thing I would like to say before I dive into this is anybody can be trafficked. I have
Okay.
seen people who come from wealthy families who have two loving parents in the household fall victim to being trafficked.
Mm.
I have seen people who grew up in foster care. I've seen people from all walks of life be trafficked, all ages. The youngest I've seen is 8 years old.
Oh my.
And they were trafficked by their parents, unfortunately. So when we're looking at this, there are patterns for sure. Like when it comes to people who are in foster care, group homes, or in care of child protective services,
Yeah.
we see the numbers jump exponentially for the chances of that person being trafficked. We see people who are in the LGBTQ2S plus,
Mm.
their chances of being trafficked go up so much. People with mental health issues come from lower economic families or households, or people who don't have supportive families or people in their life.
Mm.
So I go in, and my one of the things that my foundation does is we go and we support people and we teach people about vulnerabilities, how to look out for red flags.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that I focus on is making sure that these youth, or the whoever I'm working with at the time, has proper support. Because one of the things that I've noticed is the fastest way for somebody to be trafficked is the fact that they don't have a strong network. And that could be a parent, that could be a friend, that could be a teacher. You know, kids and anybody really needs minimum one person at least in their life, where they're able to go and talk to and lean on and be able to go to when they're at a low point. These traffickers, they come in, and a lot of the times there's different forms of trafficking that we'll touch on, but a lot of the times it is the boyfriend. So we'll have somebody who's online talking to some random person, whether it's on Snapchat, Instagram,
Mhm.
Discord, or even just like an older guy who comes in, hangs around the school. Sometimes they sell drugs, sometimes they're just there. They offer somebody a ride and they start to look for their, and I call it their prey, because what they do, they look for what they consider the weakest signs. So they look for somebody who doesn't have a strong support network. They look for somebody who isn't having their cup filled by their community.
Yeah.
They look for somebody who's isolated. They look for somebody who they view as an easy prey, which I hate that term, but that's the predator mentality that these traffickers are using when they're looking for their next victim. And they come in and they act like they are the knight in shining armor. They come in, they talk to these victims, well, before they're victims, they talk to these people. They go and they make them feel so special. They make them feel like they're the only person who will ever understand them, who will ever love them. They shower them with affection. They shower them with compliments, with gifts. They shower them with the possibilities of a future. They tell them, oh, we're going to run away together. We're going to buy a beautiful house. And there's so many times where I see, these guys swoop in and they're like, I love you. Your friends don't care about you. Your family doesn't care about you. They start sending money for food. They start sending money for clothes. They start buying them, jewelry or things that they've never really had. And that's the thing. It's not always materialistic items. It's whatever they feel that person is missing from their life and will get them hooked on them.
Mm.
So it could be drugs. It could be something as simple as like, I've unfortunately seen people fall victim to it through just vapes. Like, hey, you don't have access to vapes. You're a teenager. You can't buy them. I'll buy them for you. Then they build the rapport that way. And they make it feel like, you rely on me for this. And then over time, once they realize, okay, this person is wrapped around my finger, I'm now able to tell them, you owe me for this. And it doesn't start with, oh, you're going to go work in a hotel for me. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. It's normally, I don't want you talking to this person anymore. Look at everything I do for you. What do they do for you? I
Mm.
don't want you staying at home anymore. Look what your parents are doing for you. You guys are fighting all the time. You don't fight with me. Come stay with me. I will protect you. Your family is the problem. It
Mm.
will look like, I don't want you going to school today because I want you to come out shopping with me. I want you to come run errands with me. And then it will turn into, I want to have your location. I want to know who you're talking to. I control how you're dressing. I control what you're eating. I'm buying you this. So you have to wear this every single time you're around me. And it slowly starts to build up from that.
Wow. Wow. And so if we have people within our network that something, a red flag is, is being put up for us, something is off. What are some of the things that we should be paying attention to or lean in because we're seeing something that might potentially indicate that it's trafficking?
So a few of the things I tell everybody to look out for is somebody who just spontaneously starts to withdraw. And
Mm.
of course, that could be so many things. That could be depression, they're going through a hard time, they're stressed. But a lot of the times, trap 99% of the times, traffickers' goal is to isolate them from everybody. So once you start to see somebody withdraw from their friends, from their family, even from activities that they like. For instance, I see this time and time again where people will stop going to gymnastics or stop doing art or stop hanging out with their friend group when they have like a dedicated day every week that they go and hang out with them. Another thing is lavish gifts or having an unexplained amount of money.
Mm.
Um, there's a lot of times where, especially I talk a lot about teens because again, the average age of somebody being pulled into this is 13. Of course, this happens with adults as well. But I'll be working out in the community and I'll see somebody who I know, their family struggles with some stuff. And all of a sudden they're coming in with Louis Vuitton bags. They're
Mm.
coming in with brand new hair. They're coming in every single day with their nails done, their lashes done. They're going out partying. They always have money for alcohol or for weed. They always have, certain things on them like that. Another thing is style, and of course, people's styles change, but another thing is the style of clothing changing drastically, and again, them having clothing that they didn't have before. So
Mm,
it's like having designer brands and name brands, as well as we see time and time again where, especially when it's youth, they'll start fighting more with their family. They'll start skipping class more. And I know a lot of teenagers, listen, teenagers are going to skip. Maybe not every single one, but a lot of them will skip from here and there.
yeah,
But there's a difference when it's, they're just going to the park with their friends versus you have no idea where your kid is. Their location is off,
yeah,
or you're finding out they're going to another city. And from your knowledge, these kids are 13, 14, 15. They don't have cars. So who is driving them?
yeah,
Um, Also, they're hanging out with older crowds, they're being more secretive with their phone, they're deleting messages. Um, and for me, the one thing I tell everybody, if you start to notice these signs, do everything in your power to have these conversations with your children, to have these conversations with your peers, with the people in your life. Let them know that one, you're not going to judge them.
mm,
Let them know that you've noticed these signs and don't approach it being like, hey, what is wrong with you? Approach it in a way of, I'm concerned.
yes,
I really love you. I have this appreciation for you as a person, and I want to make sure you are safe and okay.
yeah,
And then offer them resources. So if you feel like there is something going on and you just have that gut feeling, tell them, hey, you know what? I recently thought about whether you're in therapy or not. Say, I have this great therapist, or I recently thought about therapy, or there's this, community center who hosts workshops I think we should go to be able to learn more about, whether it's intimate partner violence, gender based violence, exploitation, vulnerabilities, sex trafficking, and try and open up these conversations. And if you're a teenager, because I always say this, your job as a teenager is to never try and solve the problem if you're seeing these signs. Your job as a teenager is to go and tell your parent, a teacher, or a supportive adult who can assess the situation, be able to get them help.
mhm,
Um, our biggest thing is we never want somebody to feel alone.
yeah,
And a lot of survivors and victims don't even know the resources out there. So it's simple as a quick Google search, or I will also send you as well, so you could post this if you don't mind, a
yes,
list of resources,
yeah,
phone numbers that they can call. There's the National Human Trafficking Hotline, there's the Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline, there's victim services. There's so many amazing resources that is literally just a call away. That even if this person doesn't want to disclose what's happening to them, they'll be able to be connected to services.
yeah,
Um, and for instance, for my nonprofit, if you know anybody who you have this fear that they are being trafficked, a lot of places do have wait lists for therapy or workers or support. We don't have a wait list.
mm,
Um, so if anybody needs support, please come to us as well. We can offer you a therapist. We have crisis workers. We have peer support workers who will follow the victim or survivor or person who's even just at risk,
yeah,
right? Because our goal is to catch it before they fall into the river. We
yes,
can't just keep on pulling people out of the river and expecting it to solve the problem. We want to stop people from falling in.
yeah. And I do want to talk about your foundation in 1 second.
Yes.
But before we do that, you mentioned that there's different types of
Yeah.
trafficking. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so the most common kind is unfortunately the boyfriend.
Mm,
So what ends up happening, like I said, they'll come in, they act like the knight in shining armor, and unfortunately, people fall victim to it very easily because everybody wants that love story. Everybody wants to
yeah,
feel loved. The other kinds of trafficking is debt bondage. So for debt bondage, it's normally where a situation happens where, let's say, you borrow money from somebody, or you go and they give you drugs, or they go and they buy you something. And then that person now has the power over you, and they're like, hey, you now owe us. for the stuff that we gave you. Unfortunately, I fell victim to the debt bondage. There's also, sorry, one second. There's forced marriage,
Mm.
which it's not talked about as often anymore. I feel
Yeah.
like it gets overshadowed by so many other things, but this is still a real thing that happens. Families are picking their children and being like, we are going to make sure you marry this person. And unfortunately, I see so many people who seek asylum in Canada who run away from their country to escape this. But I also see it happen to people who are from Canada, who
Mm.
are born and raised in Canada, and their parents are like, we want you to marry this person specifically so we can get money out of it. And I'm not sure if this is well known knowledge. But in Canada, with your parents' consent, you can get married under the age of 18. So
Mm.
you can legally marry a child, which is it just baffles me.
Yeah.
Also, as if you are 16 years of age, you are able anybody, no matter the age, if a 70-year-old man wants to have sex with a 16-year-old child, it is legal as long as that 70-year-old man is not in power. So that means not a teacher, not a police officer.
Wow.
So there's still not enough barriers to stop these things from happening, and it's still normalized in a way.
Yeah.
Um, and then, like I said, the boyfriend, so that's the Romeo or lover boy. And there's also, so I talked a little bit about debt bondage. The way I was recruited into trafficking was my best friend. It was a female. I was 15, she was 16 at the time. And she basically had told me, hey, come out to this party. I have this really hot boyfriend. He's going to have his friends. It's going to be a fun time. I had lived out of group home, so I didn't have the best upbringing. And I went there, and she had the intention 100% of getting me wrapped into trafficking. And I just want to say this, I have made peace with what had happened to me. I believe that she was in such a horrible situation that what she had done was to protect herself.
Mm.
Bringing somebody else in would take some of the heat off of her and the abuse that she was going through.
Yeah.
Um, so, but unfortunately, we have situations where girls are being trafficked or women are being trafficked, and then their trafficker is coaching them to bring other children or women in to be trafficked again, and then they trap them in this cycle. So sometimes it'll be the girl being like, look how much money I'm making, look at all these places I'm traveling to, look at all these things I have.
Yeah.
And then other times it'll be like my situation where I was told to come to a party, I used drugs, I drank, I slept there, I ate the food, and then I woke up and they're like, you owe us $100 for the room. You owe us the money for the drugs that you used. You owe us for the alcohol. You owe us for the food that you ate. You owe us for gas. You're not allowed to leave until you pay us that money back. And I was like, I have no way to pay you. And they were like, okay, that's fine. We're going to put up an ad for you on Backpage
Mm.
and you'll be able to make that money back and you can go home the next day. And I remember crying and being like, no, and freaking out. And they locked me in a room until I calmed down. And unfortunately, they were extremely abusive to me until I complied. So we see so many different forms of trafficking. We also have situations of people who are being trafficked for pornography. Um, and this is another situation I feel like doesn't get talked about enough,
Yeah.
where I understand that so many people are pro sex work, and I'm 100% pro sex work. If you are doing this willingly, do it, all the power to you, and I will support you along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have situations where there's no way to verify if somebody is being forced to do this. So we have situations like Pornhub where they time and time again, and the owners of Pornhub have admittedly opened up and been like, yeah, we know there's children who are being pushed onto our website.
Wow.
Um, there's things like Girls Do Porn who have openly admitted again that they know that there are people who are being forced and their videos are being uploaded and that there are kids who are being uploaded onto these websites. And it is next to impossible to get the videos taken down as well. It's gotten a little bit easier over the past, I would say, 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, but it is so hard to be able to verify. And again, you don't know.
Yeah.
So you might see somebody online, they're posting themselves traveling, you follow them on social media, they're posting their OnlyFans or their link to the Pornhub or whatever website they're using. And in reality, they have somebody who is controlling every single post that they do.
Yeah.
They're controlling what they're making. They're forcing them to do things that they don't want to do.
Yeah.
And and time again, we see this where it goes unnoticed for the simple fact that people aren't going onto these websites looking for victims.
Yeah.
They're just looking to, do what they want to do
Yeah.
during that time, and they're not really thinking deeper into it. And it's sending this message to, unfortunately, traffickers that they're going to keep on getting away with it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with what we call people who pay for sex. We normally call them Johns. So it's the same thing with that, where again, these people don't know that these women or girls are being trafficked. And sometimes they don't even know that the people they are sleeping with are underage.
Mm.
So you have these situations where these people are paying for sex or watching porn online and they aren't reading through the lines. They aren't looking for the signs. They don't know what trafficking even looks like. So then we're having these situations where thousands, hundreds of thousands of women across the world, if not millions of women, are being trafficked on a daily basis. And they're just flying under the radar.
And what I find fascinating about everything that you've just said is that these are people that we know, whether people that we're getting to know or people that we already know. And for whatever reason, I've always thought that it happens with strangers. I mean, the stories that we hear is,
Yeah.
certainly, as a parent, it's like, watch out when you're in a mall, if someone is following you, or if you're going to the washroom, like we think it's strangers, someone just throws you in a van and takes you. Like, I don't know if this is just the movie industry, how you're saying it's like the complete opposite. It's people that you know.
So it does happen,
Yeah.
but it is so rare
Mm,
that I personally don't understand why movies portray this so
yes.
often.
Yeah.
Why there are so many narratives around stranger danger. Yes, strangers can be dangerous. Again, it happens, but nowhere near as often as people who are close to us.
Yeah.
So, the most dangerous people for a child is their family members and the friends of the family members and their own personal friends.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you know this or if anybody listening knows this, but the most dangerous place for a woman to be is behind her own closed door, her own home.
Mhm. Yes, I can
So,
see that.
there
Yes.
so there is time and time again where we're focusing on these narratives of stranger danger. In reality, we should be teaching our kid uh, or our kids or our communities or the people about red flags in other adults or other people in our lives,
Yeah.
or focusing or shifting the narrative at least on the fact that no matter how much love or trust you have for somebody, you have to be able to recognize when something is off to
Yeah.
be able to protect yourself, because you can love, let's say, again, I brought up the youngest person who I unfortunately have seen being trafficked is 8 years old, and they were trafficked by their parents. And this is another thing that doesn't get talked about a lot is familiar trafficking, where it's the family or again the friend. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to admit that this is happening, because who wants to believe that a child is being born and then forced into the sex trade? And that is what the parents are allowing. The parents are well aware of this. They know what's going on,
Yeah.
and they're even pushing for this to happen.
Wow.
So I think in schools, we need to be teaching, and schools have gotten better at it in the past couple years.
Yeah.
I mean, they have like what, one presentation a year, which in my opinion, I think we should have a whole section
Yes.
in our
Facts.
curriculum
Yeah.
talking about the dangers of sex, the dangers and of red flags and sex trafficking and sexual assault and gender-based violence and anger management And, even talking about vulnerabilities when, again, when you're part of the LGBTQ2S plus community, or let's say you have mental health issues or you have an unstable household, the fact that people notice these things and they come in and they look for those.
Yes.
Um, and then the when it comes to the fact of schools trying to teach this stuff, schools are also not equipped to be able to recognize the signs adequately, and they're also not equipped with enough supports. So there's so many times where we could be noticing these things, but then they don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, there's so much to process here, and I wanted to build a little bit more on your own story because you sort of gave us sort of a bit of an
Yeah.
introduction. So what happened next? So you were stuck in this room, and then what happened?
Well, I'll start with how I even got there.
Yeah.
So, my mom kicked me out when I was 13. And I had lived on the streets for 2 months before Children Protective Services had placed me into care. During that time, I had everybody had known. Everybody in my high school had known what was going on. I was being accused of being a prostitute. I was accused of being on drugs. My mom had started telling other teenagers that I was abusive, that I was this, I was that, which was obviously a lie. My mom had abused me my entire life. And one thing I want to touch on is a lot, not all, but a lot of victims of sex trafficking had childhood sexual abuse happen to them as well, or some
Mhm.
form of other abuse.
Yeah.
My my story started when I was about 3 years old, and I started to be sexually assaulted by my babysitter. It happened until I was 9. My mom knew about it, and she didn't care. That that is the easiest way I could put it. He gave her free babysitting, so she was able to go out and do what she wanted to do.
Mm.
And I had told her, I had told the police, I had told children aid services, I had told teachers, and no matter what happened, I was not taken out of the home. And my mom basically told children aid services and the police that I was lying. Um, and then through that, obviously, because my mom abused me as well, when they would come and talk to us together, I would do whatever she said because I didn't want to get hurt. So I was already, and I hate to say this, but the perfect victim.
Mm.
Nobody cared about me. Nobody was looking for me. I had already been abused.
Yeah.
And my best friend who had led me into this knew all of this stuff.
Right.
Um,
And was she also in a similar situation, your best friend? Was she coming from a place of hurt?
she was definitely coming from a place of hurt.
Yeah.
She had also been abused throughout her childhood. And we had bonded over that.
Got it. Yeah.
That is what brought us so
Mm.
close, is that we both understood the pain and also the silence that our parents force us to have over these things.
Got it.
Um, so like I said, I was in a group home. She told me to come for the night. I ran away, went there. I wasn't allowed to leave. And I was there for a couple months. And throughout that time, it had started off as the easiest way I could put it, and this isn't the best thing to say, but it was a lot simpler. I was doing basic calls. So everything, they would put out an ad for me. I took a couple pictures. Then the Johns, as we call them, would come to the house and they would sleep with me. And in the beginning, the easiest way I could put it was very vanilla. But I was being abused by the trafficker. He was hitting me because I, in the beginning, had a very loud mouth, to put it. I didn't want to be there, and I made it very known that I didn't want to be there. To the point of one time there was a John who had just came and, had sex with me. And again, I was 14. Um, and as he handed me the money and he was about to walk out, my friend at the time had walked through the hall, and I looked at her and I was like, "How much do I owe you for this one?" And then in hopes that that would trigger something in the guy's head of, I just handed her money. Now she's asking this person how much does she owe her. I was trying so hard to find a way out. Unfortunately, that left me to being beat and locked in a room. There was times where I was starved. There was times where, I was hit. There was times where I was told that I had no right to be talking the way I was. And they had me on so many drugs to keep me awake so that I could have sex for longer. Over the couple months I was there, I slept with over 200 people,
Wow.
or was raped by over 200 people. Just to kind of put in perspective of how severe this is and how much money they're making off of people.
Yeah.
Um, and for instance, my
And
the
well,
general
was anyone looking for you? So the home that you were in, were they
yeah.
looking for you?
No, so I was considered, because I had run away before, I was considered, um I this is the way I put it, I was considered one of the kids that they don't bother with.
Mm,
Um, as soon as you start running away or you start showing signs that you have the habit to either act out, you're not as engaged, or you're not, the perfect child in terms, or the easiest child,
yeah,
they don't put out Amber Alerts for you.
got it.
They don't call schools, they don't call your friends, they just view you as, oh, she ran away, she'll come back eventually.
Got it.
So I could have died and they never would have known. Nobody would have ever looked for me. It would have
Wow.
been, years. At one point, after I had escaped trafficking, I was gone for 11 months and 23 days exactly. And never once was there an Amber Alert put out for me, or never once did they even look for me.
Oh my gosh. And how did you escape?
So I I had realized that my friend at the time, she was able to do outcalls, and I realized that she had gained the trust of the traffickers, so she had a lot more freedom than I did. And the best way I could label it is I faked to have Stockholm syndrome. I started to pretend that I was in love with this guy. I allowed him to call me his girlfriend. I started calling him my boyfriend, as my friend did as well. I started rubbing his feet. I started going out of my way to do his laundry. I started making his bed every day. I started telling him that I loved him. I started, instead of fighting, having sex with him, I started having sex with him. I started engaging in like threesomes and all this stuff, basically to be able to gain his trust so I could get the hopes of doing an out call, because I realized I had tried to run away. I had tried to leave. They were in a secluded area. All it took was him to run outside and drag me back in the house. That was it. And I was trafficked in Ajax. But there's a part of Ajax where it's kind of like country homes. It's by Ajax Downs.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit out of the way. And just before I explain how I escaped, I was touching on how in the beginning it was very vanilla. It very much turned to, one of the habits I had was I would unfortunately do self harm. I had done that ever since I was in about grade 4. So I thought that would be a way to make it easier and to make me undesirable and for me to not be able to be used.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because I started cutting myself, trigger warning here, they forced me into doing more BDSM and worse stuff.
Mm,
So I became this literal object of people who had a blood fetish, or people who had bondage fetish, or people who just wanted to hit me and do whatever they wanted. And I just had to sit there and comply.
wow.
Um, So yeah, and then I ended up faking Stockholm syndrome. I pretended to love this guy, and throughout that, I think it was about a couple weeks to a month. I'm not really sure. It's kind of, my timeline is kind of jaded just because I was very much trauma blocking. It felt like every day was the same there.
Yeah.
And again, I was on so many drugs. I was always under the influence of something. And when I finally got my first out call, it was to a hotel in Ajax, and he had driven me there. He gave me a phone that had his number in it. Um, and actually, sorry. sorry to keep on going back. There's one other part that I should say.
Yeah.
There was one male who came in, and I've talked about him in a few other articles I've done, and in another podcast I did. I call him Sam. Um, Sam saved my life.
Mm.
He walked in and he was supposed to be just another John. He looked at me as soon as the door closed and said, "You look a little bit too young."
Yeah.
The only guy out of the over 200 people I slept with or was raped by that had noticed I was underage.
Yeah.
And I looked at him with this look of, "Oh my gosh, I am terrified." Um, and unfortunately by my trafficker, some of his friends knew I was underage. Some of his friends would also come and sleep with me. So I didn't know if this was a ploy. I didn't know if this was to see if I would say something. I had no idea.
Yeah.
But I just felt my eyes start to swell up with tears. And he looked at me and he's like, "Are you here willingly?" And he whispered. And I looked at him and I just shook my head. Um, and then we pretended to have sex. So I pretended to moan. He sat there. He told me that he would come every single week. He would give me money and he would give me extra money on top of it to make sure I had some for myself. And he wrote down his number and I cut a hole in my bra and I hid his phone number in there.
Mm.
So when I finally got to do my out call, I show up to the hotel. Again, I got the cell phone and I was wearing my bra that had Sam's number in it.
Yeah.
And when I got to the hotel room, it was a sting operation. It was an undercover police officer. So
Mm.
I walk in and basically I sit down and he tells me, he's like, "Just to let you know, we are with Durham Regional Police and we are here just to do and make sure that everybody who's coming in is doing this willingly." My trafficker had relationships to police and I had already been forced to sleep with police prior to
My
this.
gosh.
So again, I didn't know who I could trust. And this is
Yeah.
a situation where people are like, "Why don't victims just tell somebody?"
Wow.
It's because we don't know.
Right.
We never know. We are so manipulated. We are so like lost into their control. They have this power over us. And if we say one wrong thing,
Yeah.
they might beat us or they might kill us,
Yeah.
right? Like we
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen.
So what's going
Um
through your mind that as he's saying this, you're trying to figure out like how do I work with what the person in
yeah.
front of me? Like, is this true? Not like what is this?
So instantly, as soon as he says that, and I sit down, I take out the phone and I text my trafficker. I'm like, "Just let you know the police are here." And he's like, "Okay, do what you need to do, and I will meet you down the street. Let me know when you're done."
Hmm.
So, number one, red flag that should have been for the police officer. I'm texting somebody as soon as he tells me that he's the police. That should have been the number one red flag. Two, I'm just thinking in my head, is this a joke? Like,
Yeah.
is am I being tested? I didn't trust it. So I wasn't going to outright say, "Oh yeah, I'm being forced into this." And at the time, I didn't have the words
Yes.
or the names to understand what trafficking was. I thought I was just a dumb kid who had shit luck and ended up in the situation and it was my fault. I genuinely believed that all of this was my fault and I had deserved it. Um so he's asking me questions. He's like, "Are you doing this willingly?" And I'm like, "I'm not allowed to answer that." So I start saying little things like, "I'm not allowed to answer that," or "I can't say that," or, you know, "I don't wanna get in trouble." Things like that. I wasn't directly saying, "Hey, I'm a victim," but I was
Yes.
dropping pretty
It's very
obvious red
sweet.
flags.
That's very sweet.
So that in hopes if this was an actual, officer who was not part of my trafficker's friend group,
Yeah.
that they would be like, "Okay, we're gonna get you out right now." And I understand um, maybe they don't have the right to just up and do that unless somebody is directly like, "I need help," but it shouldn't take that,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So I lie about my name, I lie about my age, and then they end up letting me go. They just let me walk out.
Wow.
And I remember stepping out of that hotel room, taking the phone number of Sam out of my bra, messaging him. He was there within 5 to 10
Oh
minutes.
my gosh, that's so amazing.
And I remember just bawling my eyes out while I was waiting for him. I was shaking, I was hiding in the stairwell. I was so terrified that my trafficker was going to catch this. I ended up throwing the phone in the garbage and I got in the car with Sam. We drove off, and I remember just thinking, this isn't the end. It's not that simple.
Yeah,
Like this it doesn't make sense, like,
yeah,
it was really that simple, and from that moment on, I didn't trust police, right, beforehand, but now especially because I was like, it was so obvious that I needed help, and I look so young. I don't care if I said I was 18 or
yeah,
19, whatever, I don't remember the age I said, but I was 18 or 19.
yeah,
I looked like a child,
yeah,
um, so it was so terrifying to me. And another part that I just wanna touch on quickly is I had said earlier that I was gone for, like, 11 months and 23 days or whatever. Um, I was gone for quite a while, and then I ended up turning myself in, because I also had a charge for stealing food.
mm,
Um, so I turned myself in, and then an officer came and he was like, "Hi, I'm a detective and we've been looking for you." And when he said that, I was like, "What do you mean you've been looking for me?" They were just looking through Backpage ads to see if I was ever posted again. Because they had connected me to the girl in the hotel room that night,
mm,
even though that they never did anything about it.
yeah,
So I go and I have a conversation with them and they start pressing me, acting like I was the perpetrator, acting like I was a person who was doing all the wrong. They were asking me to prove that I was actually forced into it. They were saying things like, "Oh, you're a troubled kid. We understand if you just wanted to get some money, but you don't have to ruin somebody's life." They were asking me to prove who was actually in the house if I was actually part of that house. Um, and they were showing me photos of girls, and I was like well, they were actually women, and I was like, "No," to every single one. "I don't know these people."
yeah,
And they kept on being like, "No, if you were actually there, you would know." So I started to be like, "Yes," to every single one because I wanted somebody to believe me.
yeah,
Right? So instead of treating me like I was a victim, I was treated like I was a problem and I was the bad guy for being forced into sex trafficking as a child because now I'm destroying men's lives who are sleeping with a child and how much trouble they could have gotten into and how much trouble that this poor trafficker could get into if I start accusing him of this.
wow. And so what happened next?
So I ended up being released. I got sent back to a group home. And I ended up running away again very quickly, and then I ended up pregnant at the time, and by this time I was 16.
Okay,
So I had been and during that 11 months, and also when I ran away again, I had slept on sidewalks. I had slept in shelters, in Toronto, there's a shelter called Covenant House. I had been going to Covenant House since I was 15 years old, and you're not legally allowed to stay in a shelter unless you're 16. And the shelter staff there they didn't know what happened to me, but they had such a soft spot for me. One of the workers, I call him a unicorn worker. I talk about him in everything that I do because I think it's so important for people to
yeah,
understand that it really takes one person to
one
save a life.
person, yes, absolutely.
Um, I didn't believe in therapy. I didn't believe in talking about my issues. I was angry. And again, I wasn't the perfect person. I would start fights with people. I would start fights with adults. I didn't like authority. I didn't trust anybody for very obvious reasons. I didn't
Yes,
trust anybody.
yeah,
Um, but I remember when I got out of the cells, the first place I wanted to go back to was Covenant House because they had protected me.
yeah,
They give you 3 days to get identification to prove who you are so that you could stay. The workers fought for me to stay for months. Of course, there were times where they had to tell me, "You have to leave," and I'd have to sleep the night on the streets and then come back, but they fought to get me the support. And no matter how rude I was to them, and this unicorn worker, Everton, God bless his soul because he put up with so much for me. I would cuss at him, I would call him names, I would threaten him,
Yeah.
and he just saw that I was this broken, hurt
Yeah.
child who just needed somebody to believe in them.
Absolutely.
And one day, and this was after I was pregnant, I lost my mind. I was screaming, I was threatening everybody, and he pulled me aside. He brought me into a room and he sat me down and he looked me in the eyes and he told me about his life story. I had always thought that all these workers were just book smart, I'll call them. They
Yeah.
had never lived through anything. They don't
Yeah.
understand what it's like.
Yeah.
But hearing and seeing this adult as a human being, this was my first time realizing that adults are just human beings. They don't got it figured out either.
Yeah.
They're just trying, it's
They're
their
just
first
doing their
life
best to
too.
survive. Yeah.
Um, and I remember he showed me emotion
Mm.
and I sat there and I started crying and I opened up to him. And that was the first time I had actually opened up.
Yeah.
And I was completely honest. My group home staff were so rude to me. I was bullied by my group home staff. I was in group homes with boys who were trying to have sex with me. I was in shelters with boys who were trying, so no matter what, I always felt, and I didn't have this word at the time, but I always felt exploited.
Yeah.
And this was the first person who didn't look at me like I was the problem.
Yeah.
And he sat, and when we were sitting there, he told me, he's like, there was a point in my life where I had to choose if I was going to hate the world for the rest of my life or if I was going to do something about the pain that was caused to me and if I was going to be the person to change it.
Yeah.
And I remember just looking at him. And of course, it's not normally this simple. I will say that. It's not normally as simple as somebody saying, don't hate the world, do something about it.
Yeah.
But it changed something in me.
Mm.
I went to therapy. I wanted to get help. I started working. I started to recognize when I was getting angry, I would leave the situation when before I'd be like, I want somebody to fight me because I didn't know what to do with
Y
all of these emotions
yes.
and I couldn't control my own feelings.
Yes.
And for the first time in a long time, I was able to just cry and process what had happened to me. And still at this point, I didn't know I was sex trafficked. I didn't realize I was sex trafficked till I was like 18 or 19.
Wow.
Um, I had always just blamed myself,
Yeah.
right? Because I was like, I was always being sexually assaulted. I was always putting myself in these unsafe situations. I was always out doing drugs. So obviously and this isn't true, nobody believed this, but in my head, I was like, obviously I'm the problem. Obviously
Yes.
this is me.
Yes.
Um, and that worker, I am still friends with him to this day.
Oh,
Um, I actually went and I spoke at Covenant House for their donors for their executive sleep out last year, or sorry, the year before that, and I was there last year as well. But when I spoke, I wanted everybody to recognize how important it is because we
yes.
talk about homeless youth, we talk about
Yeah.
the lack of funding, we talk about, therapy and all the supports and housing and everything that we need. We can give somebody everything, but if they don't have a support system,
Yes.
it's not going to work. And
No.
he was the reason why I was able to trust people. He was the reason why I was able to get help and recognize I needed help. And of course, not every worker can do this
Yeah.
because if they did this for every kid, they would have no life. They would be burnt out. But he would answer my calls at 3 a.m. I
Mm.
would disappear for months on end, and then he would answer my calls.
Wow.
And no matter what I needed, like when I unfortunately, because I was living in the shelter, somebody had attacked me while I was pregnant.
Yeah.
He came to the hospital with me
Wow.
and he sat there with me. Um, which again, all it takes is one person
One
to really
person to
show
make
that
a
you deserve
difference.
that love
Yeah.
to then change the patterns. And it gave me the chance to believe I was worth something. And he always told me that I had potential and that he saw I was going to change the world one day. And I'm getting emotional now talking about it because
Oh
I'm like,
my
he's the
goodness.
reason why I do the work that I do, because he taught me that I could be that for somebody.
Yeah.
And instead of hating the world, I could go out and help heal it. All it takes is really one person, and that person to be supportive and really show that somebody is worth something. That was my unicorn worker, Everton. And because of him, I had believed in myself. Growing up, and through everything I'd been through as a teenager, I always thought I would just die. I didn't think I had a future. I never envisioned a white picket fence. I never envisioned a house. I never envisioned a family. I never envisioned even being able to be something. But he never stopped believing in me.
That's
And
painful.
and after I had my son, unfortunately, he developed cancer. He got neuroblastoma. And he had passed away. So I felt like the world was crumbling again,
Yeah.
but in a way I had never felt. There is nothing more sacred than having a child.
Yes.
So through that, again, Everton was my biggest support, and he was part of the reason why I didn't fall as far down as I would have, because if I didn't have him, I only knows what would have happened, right?
Yeah.
Um and then I ended up I was about 19. I had a stable job. I was able to kind of rebuild my life a little bit, and I ended up pregnant with my daughter,
Yeah.
who is the light of my life. She is now 6 years old, and because of that, and because of Everton and having my daughter and everything, I was able to see myself in a light that I'd never seen myself before. I was
Mhm.
able to be like, I deserve so much more than what I've been given. This isn't
Yeah.
my fault. I finally accepted that what happened to me wasn't my fault. I didn't have to carry this shame. I didn't have to hide behind a mask and act like,
Yeah.
everything was okay.
Yes.
And I, again, was still going through therapy. And through that, I had really just built this beautiful life for myself. I was still in a toxic relationship, which I ended up leaving. And now it's just my daughter and I couldn't be happier. And, I had taught myself that I didn't deserve to accept the bare minimum, which is something that I think we forget to teach people.
Yes.
We tell people, "Oh, love yourself. Oh, you deserve the best. You don't deserve to be treated that way." But we don't teach them what actual love
Yes.
they deserve to be treated like. And
Especially
also,
if you
we
never
don't,
experience it, right? Throughout a
yeah.
lifetime. Yeah.
And then we also don't teach people, how to stand up for themselves. Well, some people do, but it's not taught in schools.
Yeah.
Not everybody has the access to be able to advocate for themselves or even believe that they have a path to success. I mean, your whole life you're being graded. You're being told when you're doing something wrong. There's so many
Yes.
shadows that people
Yeah.
carry them, their whole lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, so after I was about 19 when I finally realized what had happened to me, and I finally realized I was sex trafficked. Um, and that was just because I was watching Dr. Phil,
Mm.
and somebody was on Dr. Phil, and she was talking about the fact she was trafficked, and her story wasn't exactly similar to mine, but there were similarities.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I was trafficked." So I started looking for, like, the stuff I went through, and this is another part of my story that I like to share, is everybody focuses on either the van or the boyfriend.
Mm.
There's not a lot of information on stories like debt bondage or other types of familiar trafficking and everything else.
Mm.
So when I was looking into stuff, the only way I was able to kinda connect my story to anybody else's was people from other countries. Now I know that there is so many people who have stories so similar to mine. It's just so underreported.
Yeah.
And I remember I was just trying to connect to other people's stories so I didn't feel alone
Yeah.
because I didn't have a community. I didn't know that there were support groups for survivors. And at this time, I was living in Montreal. So everything was French. I was still learning French. So it was a lot harder for me. And yeah, through that, once I finally found the words for it, of course, it didn't solve anything. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm okay now. I know what happened to me. But it was just that realization of I don't have to continue carrying this burden and this shadow and this guilt and shame that this is something I allowed to happen.
Yeah. And so how did you now get to a point of starting this foundation, and talk to us a little bit more about the work that you're doing with the foundation?
So it, I never expected for this to happen. And at this time, I was working in the kitchen. I decided I was going to leave working in the kitchen. I was a sous chef, so I had built up a pretty successful, life for myself at such a young age. I was very proud, and I went into sales. And while I was in sales, I started to feel a lot more confident interacting with people.
Yeah.
I learned and I think this is off topic, but I think everybody should, 1, work in service industry and 2, work in sales at some point in their life because it creates such important structures in yourself as a person.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I'm able to carry myself the way I am because it gave me the confidence that I'm able to, if I could sell a product, I can make people understand and listen to me.
Yes.
And so through that, unfortunately, the place I was living in at the time, the landlord was a slumlord. They were horrible. I had black mold in my apartment. I ended up suing them. I had a lawyer. I fired my lawyer and I went through the court process myself. So I won $20,000
Yeah.
and I had enough savings. So I decided I was going to move back to Toronto and
Yeah.
I was going to start a business. At the time, I was thinking about a bakery. I wasn't really sure what I wanted. I ended up landing on a vape store because it was just so easy at the time for me to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started a vape store, and one of my customers, this was about a year into me having my store, which I'm so proud of myself for having. Never ever envisioned myself having a store. So if
Yeah.
anybody's going through anything hard and they don't see a future or a light, just
Yes.
listen for a second. I was addicted to meth. I was addicted to crack. I had been abused my entire life. I didn't have a stable upbringing. Now I have a family. I have friends. I have an amazing network. I have 2 businesses. And like there is a light at the end of the
Yes.
tunnel. You might not believe in yourself, but trust me when I say just believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Even if it feels delusional in the moment, just believe in yourself because you can get. So I have a customer come in and she's telling me about the fact that she's a journalist and she's very frustrated because she wants to put out a story about sex trafficking, but she
Mm.
can't find anybody. And
Uh,
I hadn't shared my story with anybody but my worker and my psychiatrist and my therapist. I was still very like kind of quiet about my
yes.
life.
Yes.
And while I was working during this time at my babe store, I also had a side job where I was going into community centers and I was teaching youth about mental health.
Oh, that's big.
And that was my passion job.
Yes.
And through that, she was talking to me and I was like, I have such an amazing network now. I'm like, I can connect you to people who want to talk about sex trafficking. Let me help.
Yeah.
So I connected with over 100 people, brought over 100 people on for this story. I was willing to tell my story. I was so excited. And then we put together this amazing article, and her boss turned it down because it wasn't the right time of year. It wasn't January.
Yeah.
It was like April at this point. So we had to wait until January came around the next year to be able to put out an article. That didn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
I'm like, if we have over 100 people talking about and I call it Canada's dirtiest backyard secret. It
Yeah.
is happening in all of our backyards. You don't know if it's your neighbor. You don't know if it's your best friend's kid. You don't know if
Yeah.
it's your waitress. You don't know who it is, but it is happening around you. You just don't know.
Yeah.
So I was upset. So I start calling everybody back and thanking them for being so willing to come and speak and tell their story, tell what they've seen, tell the signs. I had officers, community healers, survivors. I had parents of, unfortunately, girls and women who were murdered through femicide, who were also trafficked. I had so many amazing people willing to share. And while I'm telling everybody, thank you for your time, thank you for everything, and just kind of sharing how disheartened I was to everybody, I had one person turn around to me while I was on the phone and be like, if you care so much, do something about it. And it just brought me back to my worker, Everton, telling me, you can be the change in the world.
Yes. Yes.
And I laughed. And I was like, sorry, this isn't funny. I'm like, but you're right.
Yeah.
So that night, I went home and I decided I was going to start my nonprofit. I had no idea what I was going to do.
Yes.
So what I did was, again, this is where my sales comes in. I started cold calling people.
Yeah.
I started cold calling organizations, founders, services. I started cold calling anybody who I could find online. I started adding everybody on LinkedIn, from police officers to, firefighters, to nurses, to social workers, to child welfare. Everybody and anybody who would give me 5 seconds of their time, I was just trying to figure out as much as I could about sex trafficking, what are the gaps that is missing, what I could do, and I also went through a course at George Brown College, so I have my peer support worker. So I'm actually a registered peer support worker. I was going through suicide trainings, prevention, de-escalation trainings, trauma informed care training. I have over 50 certificates.
Wow.
I've spent so much time trying to educate myself as much as I could. And all this started just because I wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
And through that, so far I've done 990 something. I don't know, it's 990 something interviews.
Oh, wow.
And it started in Toronto. It
Yeah.
quickly spiraled to Canada. It spiraled to the entire world. So I've interviewed people in Vietnam, South Africa, the UK, America. Um, again, anybody who would give me the time of day. And of course, some things is a little bit difficult because we were going over email translation, but I had learned so much. So I decided I was going to start simple. I was going to start with doing workshops because that's something that I was well versed in. And I was going to go in and teach youth about sex trafficking and how to prevent it, how to empower themselves. And very quickly, again, in the beginning, I've been doing this for 3 years now. In the beginning, I did not know how big this would become.
Yes.
And it spiraled into bigger than life. So now I do hobby to hustle programs. Not only am I teaching youth how to build up their confidence, how to look out for red flags, how to reach out for help, how to control their anger, I'm also focusing on how to not become a trafficker.
Yes.
Because everybody focuses on how to not become a victim. How do you not become a trafficker?
Yes.
And a lot of these people are falling into it because they don't have access to money. They are missing, they are neglected in some form, and they are missing
Yes.
something. So that's where my hobby to hustle also comes in. I teach youth how to build their own businesses through their
Mm.
hobbies. You
Yeah.
like video games, you like, you know how to swim. Let's teach other kids how to swim. You know how to cook. Let's sell your food. You know how to crochet. So that was my next program that I added onto my workshop. So I go in and my workshops, I do a minimum of 4 weeks with each group. I do not think anything below that can tackle or even solve anything. Of
Mm.
course, if somebody asks me to come in, I will come and do a presentation, but I don't like doing that. I like to spend time and teach these youth, and everything I do is play based. So I've spent so long and I'm always fixing stuff, I'm always updating it, always changing it, but
Yeah.
everything I do is a game. So
Yeah.
these youth are actually engaged into this stuff, not because they're like, oh, I want to learn about sex trafficking. Nobody wants to sit there and listen to a lecture. A
Yeah.
child, an adult, even when I do trainings with police, when I do trainings with shelters or organizations, everything is play based.
Yeah.
So I'm making them debate why you shouldn't go online and, accept gifts from strangers. I'm going and I'm making them play games to recognize red flags. I'm making them role play. I have prizes, so I'm giving gift cards, I'm giving shoes. And then through that, I'm also looking for youth who are falling through the cracks. So I'm building up a relationship with them. We have therapists, we have access to legal as well. We have access, for instance, myself, I'm a crisis worker and a peer support worker. So I follow you throughout, I have 2 youth who have been on my caseload for a year now, and the rest I have a caseload my caseload goes up to 35 youth at a time. So I
Wow.
have a large caseload. My other team members, I give them smaller caseloads because I don't want them to burn out.
Yeah.
And we have a team of 9 people right now, which
Yeah.
is amazing, not including our therapist. So through that, we offer so many different supports because again, we're trying to stop people from falling in. And we also obviously still want to pull people out of the river once they do fall in. So our goal is to open up a center.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So
So right now you're going to like schools and
schools, community centers,
got it.
shelters,
Got it.
and even for families. Like I've had a couple situations where I have a few parents reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, we would love you to come teach our kids."
Got
And
it.
then they get as many parents as they can together. We go to the park or, I'll book out a community center or I'm partnered with Durham Regional Victim
Yeah.
Services, Durham Regional Police, and Durham Children Aid Services, as well as Toronto Police.
Yeah.
So I'm able to go and use Durham Children Aid Services
Yeah.
office and go host workshops there, which is
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
I'm able to kind of just go wherever they need me, right? Even though I'm based in Toronto, we touch anywhere in Ontario that I can. And so through that, not only do we offer the crisis support, the workshops, the hobby to hustle, the peer support, but we also offer a peer mentorship that's a little bit different than what I do, where as people move on through, I call it graduating throughout the program because I go through a list of teaching them everything from mental health, substance abuse, vulnerabilities, all that stuff, where they have the ability to also come on and be paid to help me run workshops.
That's amazing.
So I'm also giving them volunteer hours. I'm giving them the opportunity at jobs. And this is where it leads into the center where my goal is to have a wraparound center where it is an all-in-one service where what I touched on earlier is the fact that a lot of survivors lack the basic life skills. So
Yes.
to teach laundry, to teach how to cook, to teach how to budget, taxes, and which is a lot of the stuff I already do.
Yeah.
Um, but just to have a center, I want to teach how to homestead. I want to have a space where when you walk in, and this is another thing I went through as a survivor, when I would walk into these community centers, it felt clinical. I felt ashamed of myself to even be there,
Yes.
which I know it's ridiculous, but it's a weight that people carry.
Yes. Absolutely.
So I want it to feel like when you step into the center, I want you to feel like you're stepping into a spa. I
Yes.
want it to feel like an oasis. I don't want the bright lights, the white walls. I want art. I want it
Yes.
to feel home-like.
Yes. Yeah.
I want, I want to be able to have animal therapy. I want to have therapists, psychiatrists, as well as yoga, breath work. Another huge thing I focus on is the holistic side because I think that is so important. We need to
Yes.
teach breath work, meditation,
Yeah.
how to sit with yourself, also another thing, how to be bored
Yes.
because a lot of people, once they're bored, they start looking for other things to do that could lead them into sticky situations. So,
Yeah.
how to sit with yourself, how to love yourself. And then also, another amazing program I have, which we're launching an app for, I'm so excited, is I connect youth or survivors with mentors.
Hmm.
So we go in any business owner or anybody who specializes in something. So we have chefs, we have tech, we have people who specialize in AI, we have people who specialize in sales, we have real estate agents, we have workers who work specifically with youth. So we base off of what the youth wants to entertain.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. We don't think that we're going to connect you with a mentor and we expect you to finish the full program and stick with that job and stay there and be that. We want you to choose as many things as you go with the flow. See
Yeah.
what you like, see what you don't like. We connect you with an adult who has been verified, background check. We force everybody to go through trauma informed care training so at least they know what they're getting themselves into before they go and support these people. And
Yeah.
we give these youth and survivors an opportunity to find a field that they will love and be passionate about
Yeah.
and learn from somebody who is, has expertise in this
Yeah.
versus just, handing out resumes and hoping for the best. And the best part about that
Yeah.
is they can also be hired on by these companies. And we've had that happen multiple times now where the mentor and the youth or survivor actually connect so well and they graduate throughout the program and then they get hired on and they have this job that they never would have thought was accessible to them because they had nothing on their resume.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. There's, to take what you have gone through, to take all of that trauma and turn it into this is honestly just so beautiful to hear,
Thank
to
you.
see the impact that you're having. Now, how can we support you? How do we, the listeners, the viewers, how can we support you? What else do you need? How do we continue to build with you?
So donations are always welcome.
Yeah.
But my biggest thing is every month or two we do a care package.
Okay.
And I ask anybody who's a business owner, anybody who has extra money and can just go to the store, whether it's gloves, blankets, feminine hygiene products, sometimes clothing, gift cards. So when we go into these communities and we see people who are struggling, like for instance, last year I had a youth who had duct taped their shoes together because they had no shoes
Wow.
and they were too small for them. So what I did, we go out and we buy them shoes. We'll give grocery cards to people. Another thing is if you are willing to become a mentor, we need mentors. It
Mm,
doesn't matter if you think that your profession would not fit. Come and talk to us.
yeah.
Um, on Instagram, we're Phoenix Arise Foundation. On LinkedIn, we're Phoenix Arise Foundation. We have a website that you can contact us through as well as www.phoenixrisefoundation.com. And then we also have an email. And for our general email, it is info@phoenixrisefoundation.com. Another thing that we need is volunteers. So whether that's coming down to workshops, another thing is teaching cooking or just, sometimes it's even just bringing supplies, as well as anybody who is willing to offer their services pro bono to us. We have a very small budget and we are waiting to, again, we don't focus on donations right now because we want to focus on donations once our center is ready. And
Yes.
that's where we're going to need the most help. So
Yes.
anybody, if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, if you are a therapist, psychiatrist, a peer support worker, crisis worker, any of those things, even if you're none of those and you just want to figure out how you could fit into our team, we are always looking for help. We have research analysts. We have, currently we need a new social media person. Because ours went to a better job where
Yeah.
she's paid more, which is another issue about this industry is you're not paid as much as I think that everybody should be paid.
Yes.
Um, and just even just sharing our posts sometimes. If you have nothing to give, just sharing our posts, listening
Yes.
in, reading our stories. It is so important. And currently we are looking for doulas.
Mm,
So I'm trained in labor support as well as postpartum support, court support, doctor visits, all of that.
yeah.
So I've helped deliver one baby already.
Yeah.
And one of the services that we see severely lacking is support for pregnant women who have gone through such deep trauma,
Yes.
and in those moments, it's hard for them to advocate for themselves. There's so much going on. They're, giving birth.
Yeah.
And we just want to make that sacred moment so much more accessible
Yes.
and so much more, stress free and have somebody. So I go in, I advocate for them so that they don't feel like that's another thing they have to worry about. And just to have somebody by their side and offer the doula services is something that we absolutely need right now because we're seeing so many women and girls who are pregnant who have no support.
I she had one for you. I'm meeting with a friend of mine on Thursday, and her sister is a doula. She's in that industry, so I'll make sure to mention
Oh
it.
my goodness, that would be
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I'll make sure to do that for you.
And another thing is just if you don't want to share, you don't have anything else that you can offer us, just have these conversations.
Yes.
You can email me. I will send you information. You can come to our workshops. Bring your kids. Please bring your
Yeah.
kids to our workshops.
Yes.
I post about them. And if you notice that, the school that your child's in isn't doing enough about this, call me. I will come to the school.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. I never want anybody to fall through the cracks just based off the fact that resources were not available.
Yeah.
I will help you navigate through resources. If you don't know what's accessible or you feel like the person that you're connected with, whether it's a therapist, isn't able to help you, I am here to help with that as well. So,
Yeah.
again, sharing, having these conversations, even if you don't have kids, have it with your best friend.
Yeah.
You never know who in their life could be being trafficked or in your life. Have these conversations with strangers.
Yeah.
Talk about the red flags. Talk about, the dangers of, isolation and all these other things. Um, and then finally, of course, even if you don't want to support us, there's so many other organizations that need help and need volunteers,
Yeah.
whether it's just running programming, running events, fundraisers, all of that stuff. Always look out. Try and follow as many as you can so that you can keep in the know.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Callie. You have taught us so much today. Honestly, I've learned so much from you. There's just so much that's going through my mind in terms of how we can support you, the network that I can extend to you, and just hearing your story. Thank you for trusting me with your story and getting a message out there. You're making a difference. And my gosh, you're such an amazing human for doing what you're doing after everything that you went through. It's honestly been such a pleasure. Thank you. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such an honor. I really appreciate it. And again, all it takes is just starting the conversation. So it
Yes.
warms my heart that you are even open to have this.
Yeah, that one person, right? As we
Yeah.
takes just one person to have a domino effect and be able to have a huge impact in this lifetime. And we sometimes, underestimate that. We think, well, it's too big. It's, I can't
Yeah.
do it, but it's that one person. And look what it's done for you. And the message now we're talking and we're just sharing and it's a domino effect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
And one thing I would just like to add on, and this with every single conversation I have, anybody who's listening who, no matter what you're going through, even if you're not a survivor of sex trafficking, whatever you're going through, if you feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, I promise you there is. And if you have nobody, reach out to us. We will
Yes.
either it'll be myself or we will connect you with somebody and we will be your one person. You
Yes.
are not alone. We never want anybody to feel like they're alone, no matter what you are going through. Again, even though that we support survivors of sex trafficking, we also support at risk. And
Yes.
that could look like anything.
Yeah.
Even if you're struggling with depression, whatever it is, we will connect you to resources that you need, and we are here for you, and you will never be alone.
Yes. Thank you. I love that. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye.